It's called the Book of Wisdom, which means that in essence, it's all to teach us about Chachma, which I'll discuss in a moment of exactly what Chachma is. Let's take a look at verses 1 to 6. I'll read them, translate them, and then deal with them. Mishlei Shlomo, these are the Proverbs of Solomon, ben David, the son of David, Melech Yisrael, who was the king of the Jewish people. Lo das chachma umusar, in order to make known the words of wisdom and discipline, ulahavin imre bina, and to understand the words of to make the words of understanding discernible. Lokachas musar haskel, in order to be able to accept wise discipline, tzedek, righteousness, mishpat, justice, umesharim, fairness. Laseis lipisoyim arma, to give cleverness to pisoyim, simple people, fools. Linar, to youth, das umezima, to give them knowledge and design. Verse 5, lipisoyim, verse 6, Yishma chacham v'yosef lekach, that the wise person will hear and become wiser, v'novon, and a discerning person, tachbulos yin yikne, will acquire strategies. Now, that is very nice. And I'm sure that if you sat on a Sunday afternoon and you read that, you would say that was very nice, but not particularly inspiring, right? It's pretty difficult to get what is the message that King Solomon is saying to us. Give me a few minutes and you will see that there is a very profound and powerful message that's being taught to us at the very beginning of the book of Mishlei, which is going to set us on our path of this study throughout the study of Mishlei. When we look at the book of Tehillim, the book of Psalms written by King David, the way it starts with Ashrei Ish. It starts with Psalm number 1. Fortunate is the man, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't introduce it that it was written by King David. It doesn't say anything about who wrote this. It doesn't say anything about authorship. It says nothing about it. You look at many of the other books of Tanakh, you don't see anything about authorship. You don't see anything about the main speaker and the main proponent. Yet here in the book of Mishlei, he is identified by 3 identities. This is the Mishalim. These are the parables. These are the Proverbs of Shlomo, the son of David, the king of Israel. What was the necessity to have to give us his 3 credentials? Why only 3 credentials? Why don't I know here who his mom was? Why don't I know here who his kids were? Why doesn't it say something about his life and what about happened to him in his lifetime, about his kingdom, about the way that he ruled? There are a lot of other credentials, if you want to give me credentials, of why you're the one who can say these mishalim and who I should listen to. Why is this the introduction to the book? Mishlei Shlomo ben David Melech Yisrael. It sounds like a crazy question, meaning that it sounds like, Rabbi, it's 12 o'clock in the afternoon, in the middle of the day. I got a lot of things to do. What do I care who this guy was? Whoever he was. Just tell me, and move on. No, it's critical, and you'll see why in just a moment. The second thing that we have to look at is that what is exactly he's saying. Once he tells me his credentials, he's then telling me what the purpose of the book is. If you look at verse 2, in order to be able to know Chachma and Musar, wisdom and discipline, whatever that is, to understand Imre Bina, to understand, to make words of understanding discernible. What is that a purpose? Why is that the purpose of this book? Lokachas Musar Haskel, to take wise discipline, Tzedek, Mishpat, Mesharim, righteousness, justice, and fairness. And who is the audience of this book? That's verses 5 and 6. That to be able to laseis lipisoyim arma, to give simple people wisdom, linar da sumazima, and to people that are youth-like, childlike, to give them understanding and knowledge. Yishma chacham v'yosef lekach. Wise people will hear it and they'll become even smarter than they are. Discerning people will hear it and they'll learn strategies. What King Solomon is doing at the beginning of this book is that he is telling us what his credentials are to present all of this material, what the purpose, the theme of this book is, and who is the audience of this book. Tonight, we're going to be concerned with his credentials and with the theme of the book. What really is the theme of Mishlei, and why was it necessary to establish credentials? So let's look at verse 2. Verse 2 and verse 3 tell me what his credentials are. What the purpose of the book is. A, ladas chokhmah, to know wisdom. B, to know musar, discipline. And C, lahavin imrei bina, to understand the words of understanding. What are those three things? Okay, first of all, what's Chachma? So the theme of this book and the name, the appellation that this book is given, it's called the Book of Chachma. Because, and we're going to spend a lot of time on the theme of Chachma in the first 9 chapters. As a matter of fact, those three things that I just said, Ladas, Chachma, Musar, Lahavin Imrei Vina, those three things are actually the three themes of the entire book of Mishlei. Chapters 1 to 9 is Ladas Chochma. Chapters 10 to 24 is to understand Musar, discipline. And chapters 25 until the end is Lahavin Imrei Bina. What exactly is Ladas Chochma? What is Chochma? So I want to ask you the question, and you unmute yourselves and you can answer. What is Chachma? Wisdom.
Knowledge.
What is wisdom?
Knowledge.
Knowledge. Okay. And what is knowledge?
Understanding your surrounding, understanding people, understanding,
Okay.
I guess.
So it's more than just knowledge then. It's really understanding. Because knowledge is really just facts. When you know things, you know things, but you don't necessarily understand them. You don't necessarily have a depth of understanding. So when we talk about real chachma, we're talking about a deep understanding. But what is it a deep understanding of? It's a deep understanding of what life is all about. Because until you have that chachma, until you have that wisdom of what life is all about, of what our priorities are in the world, what are values, what are the most valuable things, then it's very, very difficult to make good decisions and to make the right choices. Because only if you understand what life is about can you make the right choices. Everybody wants to be successful, but until you define that word success, so then what exactly are you choosing? Oh, I'm making the right choices to be successful. What's success? If success is money, then that's one set of choices. If success is integrity, then it's a whole nother set of choices. And until you define what your parameters are, until you define what your values are, you could be making wrong choices for the set of values that you want to live. I want to be this kind of person. Well, this kind of person does these kinds of things. But unless I understand what that means, there isn't a way in the world that I could make proper decisions. The first thing that we ask for in the morning when we daven the Shmona Esrei, the Amidah, we say 3 blessings that are in every single Amidah, 365 days a year, 3 times each day. But then we get to the middle, the 4th blessing, and from 3 to 30, for the next 13 blessings, so 3 to 16, we ask God for things. We ask Him for health. We ask Him for sanity. We ask Him for redemption. We ask Him for parnasa. But one of the first thing that we ask Him for, before we ask Him to forgive us, And before we ask him for the strength to be able to do teshuvah, we ask for wisdom. Ata chonen la'adam da'as, we say. That you give wisdom to a person. Chanenu me'itcha chachma bina b'das. God, give me from your wisdom. First thing we ask for. Why are we asking for wisdom first? Why don't we ask for health? Because without health, you can't do anything. Without parnasa, without livelihood, you can't do anything. Why don't we ask for that first? Why don't we ask for world peace first? Why are we asking for wisdom? Because if we don't understand what life is all about and what the real purpose of life is, then how are we supposed to ask for forgiveness? What are we making money for? What are we living for? What are we begging that we be healthy for? For what? What are we trying to accomplish? The first thing I need is an understanding of what am I doing here? What is my purpose in this world? What am I supposed to be accomplishing? And I will tell you that most people have no idea what they're supposed to be accomplishing in this world. And that's why there is so much pain. That's why there is so much confusion, because it's just not clear of what I'm supposed to do and what I'm supposed to be. Why am I here? If you contemplate that question, some of us are wax philosophical, so you can give certainly a verbal answer to that question. But to give a real answer to that question, what am I doing here? Why did God put me on this earth? Why was I born now? Why wasn't I born 150 years ago? Why was I born on the date and the time that I was born? On Yom Kippur, we say a beautiful prayer. We say, Elokai, ad shalom notzarti eni kedai. Before you created me, I wasn't worthwhile. Well, of course I wasn't worthwhile because I wasn't here. So what kind of stupid statement is that? It's some poetry. Oh God, before you created me, I wasn't worth anything. Yeah, you weren't worth anything because you weren't here. No, what it means is that God, before I was created, the world didn't need me. The moment that I was born, February 20th, 1960, the moment that I was born, that's the moment that the world needed me. And I didn't play a role on January, on February 19th, or on January 1st, or 1958. I would have been insignificant. I was born on the day and the time, on the Shabbos, at a specific time that I was born, because that's when I needed to enter into the world. Until I know that, then, and I know why I'm here and what my purpose and my tachlis is, then what am I doing? What's all my efforts? That's why I need to have chachma. I need to have wisdom at the very foundation of my existence. Because before I do anything, I need to understand what I'm supposed to be doing. What am I all about? What is my purpose? Look, many of us hit this at a certain stage in our lives. They call it a midlife crisis. But what a midlife crisis is, in midlife crisis is not an opportunity to be able to go have an affair and buy a fancy car. A midlife crisis is a moment when a person looks at themselves and says, okay, what is all this for? What's the end game here? Where am I going? What am I supposed to be doing? Some people hit the midlife crisis earlier than others only because they're thinking earlier than others. Sometimes teenagers have this. What am I supposed to be doing here? What am I supposed to be accomplishing? Young adults have this. Until we can answer that question of why am I here, until we get that knowledge and understanding of what life is all about and what the values are, then how do I know where to put my energy? We say I should put my energy in whatever, but how do I know that's really important? How do I know that's really valuable and it's really something that I should be putting my energy into? And maybe some of the things that I'm worried so much about and putting my energy into are really not as important as I think they are. That's why Shlomo Melech says, what was his first objective of writing this book? What is the theme? Ladas Chachma, to understand wisdom, to understand what life is all about. Often it's counterintuitive to a person's nature. It can't be derived just from human experience. Rather, it has to come from divine teachings. The more we study in Torah, the more we understand the meaning of Torah, not the words of Torah, but the meaning of Torah, and the meaning of the stories of the Torah, the meaning of the commandments of the Torah, then we understand what's valuable to us. I've spoken before that the Torah says that if you do certain things, you're going to die. You're going to die. You're going to get killed. We wonder, why is there capital punishment in the Torah? Because the truth is, you can't administer capital punishment. Because the rules for administering capital punishment are so tight that it would be impossible to be able to convict a person for a capital crime. For example, for murder. You would have to see the person die, get shot and killed by you, or stabbed and killed by that person. And if you missed 1 second of the event, then you can't be a witness for that. That person can't be tried in a court of Jewish law. Guy runs down the street saying, I'm going to kill you, I'm going to kill you. The fellow he's running after runs into a building. He runs after him into a building, and you hear a scream, a thud. You come into the building, 2 witnesses, and you see him standing with a bloody knife and a dead guy on the floor. Can't try him in a court of Jewish law. Can't try him in a court of Jewish law because you didn't see him get killed. So thank you very much. The Torah says you kill somebody, you get killed. It's not going to happen. Why is this going to stop anybody? Why is anybody going to look at it and go, I shouldn't kill because it's bad? What do I have to worry about? I ain't going to jail. There's no jail in the Torah, by the way. There's no jail in the Torah. Isn't that a freaky thing? It's not written in the Torah. There's no jail. We've invented a kind of jail. The rabbis invented a kind of jail, but there's no jail in the Torah. So what are we doing? And the truth is that we believe that our system is the best, smartest system in the world. And that the Western system, which is a punitive system, is bankrupt. You know why it's bankrupt? Because you know what a criminal does? A criminal says to themselves, what's the best? He makes a mathematical calculation. He looks at odds. And he says, I know that if I kill somebody, I could end up in jail and maybe even a life sentence. But maybe not. Maybe I'll get a good lawyer and I'll find a way out of this. Or maybe nobody will actually see me do this. They won't figure it out. And I have to weigh the odds. What are the odds of my going away for life to being able to accomplish getting rid of this person from the world, or stealing this money, or doing whatever crime it is that I'm going to do? And that's the reason why there's such a big thing called recidivism, why criminals go back into jail, because they're not rehabilitated. They lost the gamble. They ended up in jail. But when they get out of jail, they didn't learn anything. They're just a little bit better at the odds now. They're maybe a little bit more calculated, but it's all an odds game. They're all just trying to figure out, is the gain going to be greater than the loss? So then how does the Jewish system work? Because our system, you know why the Torah says most you must? The Torah is not threatening you. The Torah is not telling you if you do something wrong, you're going to die. The Torah is telling you, I want you to know how bad this is. You should die. Whether I can kill you or not is immaterial. But this is something that is evil. You remember this thing called prohibition? It was in the 1920s, right? That they said that you couldn't drink liquor. Do you know when they produced the most liquor in the world? During that time. Yeah, nobody listened to it. Nobody listened. It was a great time. If you were in the liquor industry, you were making oodles of money during the time that it was prohibited to produce liquor and to sell liquor. Because again, they were making a mathematical calculation. You know why it was a failure? Because nobody could understand why it was wrong. If it's not wrong, why aren't I doing it? Why are you telling me I can't do it? In our system, what the Torah instructs us, when the Torah says, if you do this, if you do that, you're going to die. Torah is not threatening us. The Torah is saying you could very well not die. But I want you to understand that this is a death penalty, and it's therefore this crime is terrible. You know, it says in the Torah that an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. Do you know that doesn't mean an eye for an eye, for a tooth for a tooth? If you knock out somebody's eye, The one thing I can guarantee you, you're not going to lose your eye. Court's not going to bring you into the court and they're going to say, you know what? You knocked out 97% of that person's eyesight. We're going to take out 97% of your eyesight. It's not going to happen. You knocked out two of their teeth. We're going to take out two of your teeth. That's not going to happen. So rather, says the rabbis, you know what that means? An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth? That means that you have to pay money for the eye. Whatever that we value that eye at, that's when you damage that person, you have to pay for the eye. You knocked a tooth out of a person, you have to pay for the tooth. Now, I want to ask you a question. Why didn't the Torah just say that? Because, by the way, do you know what the world says about our Torah? You know what the world calls us because of that verse in the Torah? Barbarians. Barbarians. Because we're willing to take an eye for an eye or a tooth for a tooth. We're a bunch of barbarians. Well, why did the Torah do that to us? Why did the Torah just say money for an eye, money for a tooth? Just say it the way it is. If that's what it really means, then just say it that way. Because if it would have said that, you know what you would have thought? You would have thought that if I punch you in the eye and I damage your eye, as long as I throw money at it, I'll be able to fix it. But the Torah tells me, I should have lost my eye. Really, it's an eye for an eye. But I can't I can't fulfill an eye for an eye because I can't figure out how much of your eye I knocked out and therefore knock out only that exact amount of my eye also. And therefore, what the Torah says is that, we're going to call it an eye for an eye because it wants you to know how bad this is. And if you took out this person's eye, you're going to need to spend your life saying you're sorry to that person, taking care of that person and worrying about that person because you really should have lost your eye because what you did was terrible. Everything in the Torah teaches me values, not commandments. We look at the Torah, 613 commandments. It's 613 values. This is what we hold dear. And until I have that wisdom, how do I know how to live my life? Because how do I know what my priorities are? How do I know what my values are? My values don't come from my belly. They don't come just because these are my values, because those fluctuate. If values are based on me, they fluctuate. I don't want to call in my age, but I remember what values were when I was a young man. Yet I remember what was the worst crime in the 1950s. I was not a young man in the 1950s. As I said, I was not born then. But you know what the worst crime was in public school, 1950s? Chewing gum in class. Chewing gum in class. You know what the worst crime is in 2010? Shooting a teacher. Yeah, things have changed just a bit. Behaviors that were considered off and terrible have become moral and acceptable. And if you say that they're immoral, you're an immoral person. The world is flipped around. Flipped around. Because when morality and values are based on my own vision, they're not stapled into anything. That's why King Solomon says, I want to teach you how to live life and make the right decisions. But before I do, what I got to teach you is what life is all about. Lodas Chochmah. You see, I just took those two words and breathed a little life into those two words. This is what King Solomon meant. I'm not making this up. But when you understand what he meant, wow, that's amazing. Okay, it gets more amazing. Just give me a few more minutes. The second thing that King Solomon says he needs to teach us is Musar. Musar, ethical development, but the best way to translate Musar, and the way that I'm going to translate throughout the book of Mishlei, where we're going to see this word a lot, is discipline. Discipline, which means application of the wisdom that we just learned. It's very nice to know what's moral. It's totally a different thing to live your life by that morality, to be able to use that to guide your life and to inform every one of your decisions. A person needs discipline to overcome the inclination to make unwise choices in their life. Do you know what we call that inclination to make unwise choices? Yetzer hara. Another word another term we're going to have to get very familiar with. Yetzer hara, which we translate as evil inclination, which we like to think of is that little red guy dressed in a spandex suit with a pitchfork sitting on our shoulders going, no, do it wrong, please. That's not, the Yetzer hara is deep inside of us. It is our inclination to make unwise choices. Best description of the Yetzer hara that I can give. The root of this discipline is understanding that it's all about God and that life is all about God and where God fits in our life. And that's chapters 10 to 24. That says King Solomon, once you got the Chachma, now you need the Musar. Now you need the discipline, the self discipline to be able to do this, to be able to live by this, to be able to turn your life into this and not just know it. You know, a lot of times people know these principles as principles. In other words, they'll live by them and die by them. But I shouldn't say live by them. They'll die by them. They'll speak about them. A blue streak. But to actually live by them, that's already a different thing. There are many people that understand what the truths of the Torah are, what the truths of life are. But to actually live those, much more complicated. And then King Solomon says, number 3, Lahavin Imre Bina. To understand, to make the words of understanding discernible. What that means is that by understanding the message and the Spirit of God through the Torah. Let me explain this. You know, there is a letter of the law and there is a spirit of the law. There is things that are demanded of us in Judaism. I'll give you a perfect example. Again, something I've probably brought in many other classes. When God wanted to give the Torah to the Jewish people, so he went around to the nations of the world and he asked them if they wanted the Torah. And every nation asked him, what does it say in your Torah? So to the first nation, the Esavites, God said, oh, it says in the Torah that you can't kill. Oh, says the Esavites, I'm sorry. We're murderers. We can't live by that. I'm sorry. We gave it the office. We're not interested. Then he goes to the Ishmaelites and he says to them, will you take the Torah? And they said, what does it say in your Torah? And the Ishmaelites said, and God said to the Ishmaelites, it says you can't steal in the Torah. A different thing than he said to the Esavites. Ishmaelites said, oh, if you can't steal, I'm sorry, we live by stealing. We can't take your Torah. And they denied the Torah. All 70 nations of the world said no. God came to the Jews. You all know the famous joke, right? God came to the Jews and said, you want to take the Torah? And the Jews said, how much? God said, it's free. They said, oh, we'll take 2. And that's why there are 2 tablets. Okay, bad joke. But the truth is, he came to the Jews. What did the Jews say? Na'aseh v'nishma. We will do, we will listen. We accepted it sight unseen. We didn't ask what was inside the Torah. We didn't care. If God wants to give it to us, we'll take it. Well, there's a very, very big problem. Ladies, have you heard of the concept called the Sheva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach, the 7 Noachide laws? Every non-Jew in the world is commanded 7 laws from the Torah. God commanded them to Noah, and that they became part of the tradition. No idolatry, no murder, no incest. All of these things were commanded to non-Jews. Which means, listen to how crazy this Gemara is. God came to the nations of the world and he said to the first nation, do you want to take the Torah? And the first nation said, no, I don't want to take the Torah. Why? Because it says in the Torah you can't kill. Wait a second, buddy. Who cares what it says in the Torah that you can't kill? You can't kill anyway, because it's one of the 7 Noachide laws. And then when he goes to the second nation, he says to them, you want the Torah? And they said, what does it say? And he says, you can't steal. And they said, no, we can't take that. What do you mean you can't take that? You're already commanded not to steal. So what difference does it make whether that's in the Torah or not? So listen to this unbelievable thing. You know, for a non-Jew, when it says don't steal, you know what it means? Don't steal. For a non-Jew, when it says don't kill, you know what it means? Don't kill. It's a rule. Don't kill, don't steal. When God comes to us and says, don't kill, you know what that means? That doesn't just mean don't kill a person and take their life and spill their blood. Don't kill means don't kill a person's spirit. That means don't kill a person's sense of self. That means don't make a person's life so miserable that they can't even live anymore. When it says don't steal doesn't mean just don't stick your hand in his pocket and take his money. Don't steal means don't fool him. Don't mislead him. Don't give him self-serving advice that's good for you and bad for him. Don't steal his sleep. Don't steal his dignity. What God was presenting in the Torah was not rules. He was presenting a lifestyle, a spirit of existence, not a letter of a law. What the nations of the world were saying is, letter of the law, we're happy to take. Don't kill, happy to take, we're already commanded. Don't steal, happy to take, we're already commanded. But now when you tell me that I have to put this in my lifestyle, now when you tell me that it has to inform my spirit, now that it is more than just a rule, but it's now a way of life, that I'm not willing to do. What kind of person is meant to emerge from all of these mitzvos? That's what it means, Lahavin Imrei Bina. And that's the third objective of this book of Mishlei, is so that we understand the deeper meaning of what not the letter of the law is, but the spirit of the law. What does God really want of us? Now, based on the fact that those are the themes of the book, now let's turn to the teacher of the book. Who the heck are you to teach me these lessons? What are your credentials, sir? You see, you need to have credentials because otherwise it's not believable. You know, you see a book about a diet and the book looks amazing. You buy the book and then you find out that the person who wrote this diet book is 677 pounds. And, you know, and in the shade, right? And you look at it and you go, this is not believable. You have a doctor that says to you, don't smoke. And then you catch them outside having a cigarette. You have a teacher that is teaching all about the ways to teach children in the most beautiful, beautiful way. And then you find out they're a pedophile. It's not believable. It's not anything that you could learn from. Shlomo HaMelech, who wants to teach us the fundamentals of life, wants us to understand that he has credentials to teach those fundamentals of life. First of all, who am I? I'm Shlomo. What does the Navi tell us about Shlomo? The most important thing it says about Shlomo? God came to Solomon and asked him, what do you want? Ask me whatever you want. I'll give it to you. You want wealth? You want fame? What do you want? You know what King Solomon asked for? Wisdom. Because when you have wisdom, you can make money. When you have wisdom, you can have fame and fortune. Shlomo Melech was considered the wisest person in the entire history of the world. So much so that a rabbi say that Shlomo Melech understood how to talk to the animals. Now, all I know is that there was a guy, Dr. Doolittle. He knew how to talk to the animals. Why is it a big shtick? So Shlomo Melech could talk to the animals. What's that mean? You could talk to the animals. How is that a symbol of wisdom? Because once Shlomo Melech understood what his purpose in life was and what the animals' purpose in this world was, he could understand them. Because he could understand that their purpose was the same. It was to serve God and to be here as part of God's world. When it says that he understood the animals, whether he spoke, orangutangish, I have no idea. But what it means is that he was able to understand everything that an animal said because he understood what an animal was. He understood what the purpose of an animal was. So when Shlomo Melech is going to teach me about Chachma, going to teach me about wisdom, teach me about what life is all about, we need to know who he was. What are your credentials? I'm Shlomo. I'm the guy who God said was the wisest guy in the world. Okay, what's the second thing King Solomon is going to teach us about? Musar, discipline, how to apply it. Who am I? Why can I teach you about that? Because I am Ben David, the son of David. I have to do this a little quick. But who was the son of David? Who was David? We all know the story of David and Bathsheba. We know the wrong story, though. We know the story that the secular scholars have interpreted the story. The way that we understand the story is that David HaMelech saw this beautiful woman. He wanted to marry her. Happens to be she was not married. The story goes that she was married. She wasn't married because anybody that fought in King David's army wrote a get, a divorce document to their wives on condition that if I do not return in 30 days, then we are divorced from now. And the reason they would write that document is so that in those days, they couldn't find all the people that died in the war. And if they couldn't find the man who died in the war, his wife could never get remarried. So David HaMelech, in his great compassion, had every one of his soldiers write this kind of divorce to his wife so that if he didn't come back from war, she was a widow, not she was a divorcee, not a widow. A widow can't get remarried. A divorcee, that's not a problem. She can get remarried. Uriah, the husband of Bathsheba, did not give that kind of get to his wife because he ignored David. He rebelled against David. And what he did was he gave a real get. And therefore, David HaMelech had to tell him to return to his wife twice because he wasn't listening, because he was divorced. She wasn't really his wife. And that's why King David took him and sent him out to the front that he should be killed, because he was deserving of death, because he was not because David wanted his wife, but because he was a mored b'malchus. He rebelled against the king. But why was David punished? Because David was the king, and there was a better way to do this. It smelled bad. It smelled like it was espionage, and he was doing this because he wanted the guy's wife. And as king, as public figure, he should have done it a different way. That could have taken me an hour to explain. I'm doing it a little fast. But when David HaMelech found out that he did something wrong, Nathan the prophet told him a story that that David HaMelech extrapolated and understood that was his mistake. There is a space of 9 letters written in the book of the prophets. And then David HaMelech says the following 2 words, Chatasi Lashem, I have sinned to God. Our rabbis understand that what happened in that space of 9 letters, David HaMelech broke down in tears, and he realized that this was a mistake. He was able to listen to this message and apply it to himself. Says King Solomon, I'm the son of David HaMelech, Ben David. I learned from my dad how to take responsibility, how to discipline myself, how to be able to learn from these lessons and apply them to my life. And then what was the third thing he was going to teach us? Lahavinim Rebina, to understand the ways of wisdom. What were his credentials to teach me that? Melech Yisrael. Ladies, if I play a little word association game with you and I say the word Melech, king, what words will you associate with that? War, leadership, power, money. Okay, that's not according to the Torah. You know who the king is according to Torah? The king represents the Torah. Do you know that what a king has to carry around with him everywhere he goes? Torah. The Torah. And you know how big that Torah was? It's about yay. And it was like a charm on a bracelet. So that he was always 24/7 cognizant of what was his mandate, what was in the Torah. And the Torah says the words that he has to read in it all the days of his life. One of our commentaries explains that it's not that he has to read the Torah all the days of his life, but the Torah has to read all the days of his life. In other words, the Torah has to be an autobiography. The Torah has to be a reflection of the kind of person he was. The Melech Yisrael was the one that was responsible. He was the representative of Torah, and he is the one that carries the Torah with him also, always, and teaches the Jewish people the example of being a Torah Jew. As a matter of fact, who crowned every king? God did. God chose the kings because the king was a representative of God. Do you know what the punishment is for cursing a king? You know what the punishment is for cursing Obama? You become not Obama, Trump, cursing the president. You know what happens? You become against a politician. Yeah, you can rise to power in your party. You know what happens if you curse a king, a Jewish king? Moed b'machas, chayav misa. You put to death. Because you know who you're making fun of? You know who you're degrading? God. Because it was God's choice. And therefore, Shlomo Melech comes along and he says, I know Imre Bina. I understand the message and the spirit of the Torah because I am the Melech Yisrael and the King of the Jewish people. So now, ladies, look back at these first two verses. One of my credentials, Mishlei Shlomo ben David, Melech Yisrael. And what am I here to do? Ladas Chachma as Shlomo, Musar ben David, Lahavinim Rebina, Melech Yisrael. Wow. That's the introduction to the book. This is what I want you to get. And this is why I am the one who is available to be able to teach this to you. Okay. I got through about half of my notes. That's good. I'm prepared for next week. There's still more that has to be said about just these two verses before I go on to verse 3. This is pretty much the kind of style of the way we're going to learn this. The words are important, but they're not important. In other words, it's the concepts that are coming out of these words that are really the most critical. Okay. That's my my spiel for this evening.
That's amazing, Rabbi. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Like I said before, if we are cursing Trump or whoever, it's same as cursing Hashem because he chose them to be the leaders.
On the ultimate sense, not if there was a court of Jewish law, you wouldn't necessarily be taken to court and killed. But conceptually, it's the same thing because at the end of the day, we believe that this is the way God wanted it. So if you're going to curse the king, really ultimately what you're doing is you're cursing God.
But there's a difference between a leader and a king.
Yeah,
there's all kind of leaders, but there's one king.
That's why I say it's not halachic. It's looser conceptual, and I don't even know if you can make that same comparison because a melech lived his life in a certain way. So when I'm making fun of him, I'm really making fun of God. When David HaMelech, after he did this business with Bathsheba, so his Rebbe, Shimi ben Gera, actually took him to task and slammed him. And David, because he was king, was allowed to kill him because he went over the line. And David didn't. You know how David reacted to it? This is for a whole nother time. But you know how David reacted to it? This is incredible. Absolutely incredible. David looked at it and he said, I must have done something wrong. Because if not, why would my Rebbe talk to me like that? I take responsibility for this. That's who David HaMelech was. When somebody says something to you, runs you down, insults you, so we look at them, we say, you're terrible. I can't believe you did that. But the way what David HaMelech teaches us is you got to look at yourself and say, why did that just happen to me? In the same way, like a person, runs into a wall and they say, how come that, that accident just happened to me? In the same way, when a person insults you, when you run into a wall of a person, you have to ask yourself the same kind of question. But that's with the Melech Yisrael. So by the way, David HaMelech did kill him. He did, but not himself. He told Solomon that he should kill him. I'll tell you that story another time. Okay.
Rabbi,
yes.
Just one more thing. Of
Sure.
course, that's my Mishigas. But you were saying that if we have wisdom, we can acquire everything. We can live healthier. We can have more money and everything. in my experience, and you know my stories, I believe that wisdom is very important, and I would choose, of course, wisdom over anything. But Parnasa has not always has to be with wisdom.
Right. So I'm gonna tell you a crazy thing.
It comes from another venue. I know that that's my Michigan.
No, I'll give you the quick answer. I'll give you the quick answer. Right. And it's a good question. And I'm gonna give you a quick answer. I think I might have said this 2 weeks ago, but Nara Yisi, Gamza Kanti, Velo Reisi Tzadik Ne'ezov. Right, we're seeing that at the end of benching. Nara Yisi, I was a child. V'gamza Kanti, and then I was old, right? Knows throughout my entire span of life. Lo Reisi, I never saw a Tzadik Ne'ezov, a Tzadik that was dismissed by God. That was Ne'ezov, that was abandoned by God. It's not true. By the way, I do know people that don't say this paragraph mentioned because they say that's not true. There are many tzaddikim, many righteous people that were Ne'ezov. And they're wrong, by the way. You can't just take that paragraph out. But the reason why people take it out is because they say that's just not true. What do you mean? There's plenty of tzaddikim that are Ne'ezov. No, you've never in your lifetime seen a tzaddik who's Ne'ezov. You know why? Because go to that tzaddik and ask them, have you been abandoned by God? The person will say no. It's tzaddik. He understands. He's got chokhmah, he's got wisdom. What wisdom does, it doesn't give you $1 more, but it gives you a totally different perspective on that dollar. And that's who is a wealthy person? A person who's happy with their lot, not a person who has money. No money in a bank. And you can be a very wealthy person because it's all about perspective. Okay, beautiful. Ladies, have a beautiful week. And
thank you, Rabbi. Happy birthday to you.
Happy birthday.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Happy
you very
birthday.
much. Thank you.
Happy birthday.
Happy
Thank you.
birthday.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Bye.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.